Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this Friday, March 3rd session of the OBX Wave Report. This is a Friday for Future session, which means we are going to get a little bit more into the climate discussion. We're going to talk about how the longer range forecast over the coming week is starting to point toward more nor'easters for the Outer Banks. And we're also going to talk about a warm air invasion of the Arctic, particularly over Greenland, that is bringing temperatures over the Greenland ice sheet above freezing in March. And we're going to talk about how that warm air invasion in the Arctic is helping to set the stage for some potentially rather severe coastal storms for the US East Coast in the 7 to 14 day time frame. And this potential is more broad scale. We don't at this point in my view, have a specific focus on a specific storm, although the longer term global forecast system models are starting to spit out some potentially scary stuff in the 1 week time frame for the near coastal waters of the eastern seaboard. But before we get into that, I do want to share with you this beautiful picture of the waves yesterday at Jeanette's Pier. 3 to 6 foot waves, very glassy, surreal skies, ocean waters, very clear, just crystal clear, blue green, cold still, very cold, but nonetheless, it is soothing balm to get out into the beautiful waters of our coastline to be able to venture forth into the ocean in wintertime with my fellow surfers. And I got this beautiful shot of a wave breaking at Jeanette's Pier yesterday beneath the pastel gray, white, yellowish colors of the sky yesterday afternoon. So surreal surf and sky yesterday at Jeanette's Pier. I'll leave you with that for now, and we're going to start to get into some analysis of climate and weather. And climate, weather, and waves, they're all linked. There's there's a dance that occurs in the air and the water of our world, a dance of winds, a dance of waves, a dance of currents, currents not only in the ocean, but in the atmosphere. And as the Earth system has been forced to warm by fossil fuel burning, the currents in our atmosphere have been changed by heat. And what we have seen are frequent invasions of warm air into the Arctic, which has smashed against the cold core in the Arctic Ocean region and broken off bits and pieces of remnant cold that get pushed southward over the continents. And what's happening now is we have a series of low pressure systems, a chain of lows that are scooping up heat and moisture from an already warmer than normal Atlantic Ocean and the near surface airs of that Atlantic Ocean that is warmer than normal. They're scooping up those warmer than normal airs and they're creating this kind of like a relay, this relay pull of heat from the tropics and the subtropics and drawing it up off the eastern seaboard, pulling it out into the central North Atlantic, handing it off to a strong low just south of Greenland here, and then hurling those warmer airs over the ice sheet. And what we are seeing right now is above freezing temperatures over the ice sheet, over parts of the ice sheet in Greenland. So, for example, on the western coast of Greenland and over portions of the glaciers facing Baffin Bay, we have temperatures in the 30s, in the mid 30s, above freezing in March, 38-degree reading here on the west coast of Greenland. I'm going to zoom in close, and there's glaciers up here on this slope. So 38 degrees Fahrenheit over the glacier with downsloping warm winds heading toward Baffin Bay. These warm winds at first scooped up from the tropics and handed relay fashion northward. So you might say that, well, 38 degrees is not very warm, but it is warm. It's very warm when you consider normal temperatures for this time of year in this region, which are about 30 degrees Celsius cooler, which may be about 50 degrees-ish Fahrenheit cooler. So temperatures over Greenland typically in this region where we're seeing 38-degree Fahrenheit readings are typically in the range of about negative 12-ish, negative 10, negative 12 degrees Fahrenheit this time of year. So that's crazy. That is a lot of heat getting pushed up over the Greenland ice sheet. And the Greenland ice sheet, the fate of the Greenland ice sheet means a lot for the fate of the Outer Banks. If these ice sheets melt, if they're driven to melt by fossil fuel burning, then the islands that we live on here in the Outer Banks will see the Gulf Stream slow down and see a rebound in the ocean for the East Coast, which may push sea levels up by 2 feet just by the change in the ocean current. And Greenland itself melting is a major driver of sea level rise. And so we should be concerned about Greenland for the long term, certainly medium to long term, as it results to, or as it relates to fossil fuel burning. But we should also be concerned about the heat that is moving north and smashing against the Arctic cold, because what's happening here is we've got this river of air in the atmosphere, and it's called the jet stream. And let's go up to the jet stream. Let's look at the air currents at the jet stream level. And you can see this transport of heat into Greenland in the jet stream. You can see the air currents dipping down here across the eastern United States, across the Gulf of Mexico, across the Atlantic Ocean, and then taking this dive north toward Iceland, right across the central North Atlantic, and then bending back, contorting itself in this bulge over Greenland and Baffin Bay. That's at the upper air level what's allowing that warm air invasion, those 50-degree Fahrenheit above normal temperatures there. This huge bulge, this big warm air invasion, telegraphing through multiple layers of the atmosphere, bringing that abnormal warmth to Greenland for this time of year and driving a wedge into the cold up here in the Arctic. And what's happening is you've got this big push into the Arctic up here, and it's kind of like a seesaw, right? And you've got another big push coming into the Arctic over Baffin Bay. And let's just go ahead and advance these upper air models and see what happens to the jet stream. So you've got these big bulges, this one big bulge over Greenland and this other big bulge over Baffin Bay, these big warm air invasions. And as these big warm air invasions head toward the North Pole, you get this pinch, this kind of bag end, if you will, this sack of cold, unstable air that gets pushed over the continent. And and that's what we're looking at over the next couple of weeks. We got this big warm air invasion of the Arctic, and we got this big trough that's starting to form over the US East Coast. And I told you this story was related to the Outer Banks, so I'm going to get to that. How is this story related to the Outer Banks now? I mean, I've talked about land ice melt and sea level rise, and I've hinted at how it affects our weather, and we're going to talk about that. So what's happening is this cold is going to come into collision with heat. This cold that is being forced south by this pincer-like warm air invasion of the Arctic. The warm air, the hot air is going to war with the polar cold, and it's cutting it off. It's taking a big bite out of it, and it's shoving it southward. And so you've got this bubble of cold Arctic air that's moving south. And what waits for it? Well, let's go to the ocean. Let's see what waits for it. Let's look at what waits for the cold in the air heading south like a freight train. What waits for it is the heat. So the cold that has been pincered off is rushing south, and it rushes south into this wall of heat and moisture. Cold, unstable air, rushing, rolling in the atmosphere, creating tides and currents, eddies in the air as it clamors south after being pinched off by the warm air invasion, and it comes like hammer toward anvil toward heat. And this is the heat. The heat is in the Gulf of Mexico here at the ocean surface, where water temperatures are 5 degrees above normal. The heat is here in the North Atlantic off the US East Coast, where temperatures are 2 to 3, maybe 2 to 4 degrees Fahrenheit above normal. The heat is here in the Gulf Stream, where temperatures are 6, 12. 14 degrees Fahrenheit above normal. What are the drivers of severe weather? If you ask a meteorologist, they'll probably tell you that it's convection. It's the force of evaporation moving off the land in the ocean. They'll tell you probably that it's instability, that oftentimes it's a cold air mass coming into collision with a warm air mass. And these are the ingredients. These are the ingredients that we see off the Outer Banks here over the coming 2 weeks. Ingredients set up by two pincers of warm air, much warmer than normal air, driving into the Arctic, pulling down a refugee, unstable, fleeing cold air mass over the continent that is rushing into collision with warm, moist air, much warmer than normal, much moister than normal air over the ocean. And what do we have? We've got the potential for storms. Now, I'm going to look at the models. I'm going to look at the models later. But this is a foreshadowing. Foreshadowing explaining why, if we see some nutty stuff in the models over the coming 2 weeks, that might be a a harbinger of what might be to come for the US Southeast. Now you know why. Now you know why potentially we have a heightened risk of severe weather for the US East Coast. And it's got a climate fingerprint on it um, because of the heat, the extra heat that is moving up to invade the Arctic, the heat that is pinching off that cold air, forcing it to come south, and the heat that waits for it. Okay, so right now, looking at the NOAA satellite shot for the United States for the lower 48, we already do have a powerful storm in the Mississippi Valley region of the United States. And I'm just going to go ahead and get the latest shot for you. You can see this big swirl of cloud, the high cloud tops, the unstable cold air smashing into it from the north and west. And this system is a bit of, I would say, potential precursor of what may be to come. With the jet stream dipping on southward, we would see this kind of thing maybe developing down here over the Gulf Coast and then heading on to the north and east um, in the East Coast region. If the forecasts of where the jet stream is headed ends up bearing out. All right, but right now we've got this powerful storm that is tapping on these warmer than normal Gulf waters and that is feeding on the unstable cold air moving in from the north and west. And right now, for the National Weather Service picture, you can see this massive shield of precipitation. We've got snow north, rain south, severe weather in the Mississippi River Valley region, and we've got gale warnings all up along the coast from, looks like, parts of Louisiana, running in through parts of Florida, and then running up the U.S. East Coast all the way to Maine. Big old storm system, powerful storm system, swooping in through the eastern portion of the United States. And if you're in these regions, I encourage you to stay abreast of local weather and emergency management, particularly if you're in the Mississippi River Valley region, the Great Lakes region, and the Northeast, which is where the severe weather will tend to light up. Looking at the NOAA quantitative prediction forecast, we do have a hotspot for storms in the Ohio and Mississippi River Valley. We do have a hotspot for nor'easters to develop this over the next 7 days. And we do have a hotspot for California on northward on the west coast as storms continue to swoop in out of the northwest. As the days progress, I'll be interested to see what this region looks like. I'm curious about the 7 to 14 day time period as we are looking at a very deep dip in the jet stream to push colder air over the lower 48 and slam that colder air into that warm, moist air over the Gulf and over the Atlantic. And some of the longer range weather models, as I've been telling you, are spitting out some nutty stuff. Of course, with the weather models so far out at this point, it's grain of salt territory, but the ingredients are there for some rather powerful coastal storms, potentially. Okay, so let's get down to the waves. Right now, for the Outer Banks, we've got winds coming out of the east-northeast for most regions in the range of 15 to 20 miles per hour. So this is a fresh onshore breeze. These winds are expected to pick up throughout the day as the storm system to the west of us approaches. And we are under gale warnings for the day today, for tonight, and into tomorrow. At first, we're expecting to see easterly winds and northeasterly winds coming in off the Atlantic. These winds are expected to pick up throughout the day and then shift to the south and west and become even stronger as the front approaches. And then when the front passes, we expect winds coming out and out of the north. So some stormy conditions here for the Outer Banks over the coming day, and over the next few days, we expect rather interesting wave and surf conditions. Right now, wave and surf conditions are in the range of 3 to 4 feet. They'll likely build throughout the day with those strengthening easterly winds. I don't know if it's going to be anywhere near as clean and glassy with those stronger winds today. Stormier as we get into the night, and then south and southwesterly winds kicking up to likely gale force by early in the morning on Saturday. Right now at Jeanette's Pier, we've got 3 to 4 foot waves with a primary period coming in at 11 seconds, secondary swell coming in at 5. Winds out of the east-northeast at 17 miles per hour. That is an onshore flow. Air temperature is at 54 degrees Fahrenheit right now, ocean water at 51. I got in there, ocean water is pretty cold. I can maybe handle it for about an hour before I start to go numb, but I've got a 2-3 millimeter wetsuit. You probably want a 3-4 millimeter wetsuit out there in those conditions. Right now it's raining, expected high of 58 degrees, and there is a gale warning up for Jeanette's Pier. Heading south to Avon, we also have, heading south to Rodanthe, we also have 3 to 4 foot waves with a primary swell coming in at 11 seconds, secondary swell coming in at 7 seconds. Winds also 17 miles per hour out of the east-northeast, which is onshore as well. Air temperature is a little bit warmer down there in Rodanthe at 61 degrees Fahrenheit. Ocean water temperature is 54. A bit warmer than Jeanette's, but cooler than in past days, probably due to the rainfall, which tends to cool off the surface waters. And then, so we've got rainy conditions right now at Rodanthe, expected high of 63, and gale warnings are up. And then heading on down to Buxton. Buxton's about the same as all the east-facing beaches. Got a slightly larger swell there with 3 to 4 foot waves at Buxton. Primary swell coming in at 11 seconds. Secondary swell coming in at 3 seconds. Winds out of the east-northeast at 16 miles per hour, which is also onshore there at Buxton. Go ahead, zoom in. And air temperatures right now 62 degrees Fahrenheit. Ocean water at 61, also a little bit cooler. Likely due to the rain, you get this freshwater lens on the surface that tends to cool off the waters. Air temperatures right now, air temperatures right now 62 degrees. Weather conditions right now, rain, expected high today of 66, and a gale warning up as well as the storm system approaches from the west. Okay, so I did want to talk about winds in association with the storm system. And I also wanted to zoom out to show you guys how this strong storm system over the Mississippi River Valley region, Mississippi and Ohio River Valley region, is linking up to other storm systems. So we've got this long front that is dipping down into the Gulf of Mexico, helping to tap in that Gulf moisture and the much warmer than normal water temperatures are providing more energy for the storm in the form of moisture and convection. So we've got these warmer than normal Gulf surface waters being tapped by the storm system. And then we've got a large front swooping on across the Atlantic and up into another powerful storm system off Newfoundland. So kind of a chaining effect between these two storms. And here on the Outer Banks right now, we've got some winds coming out of the northeast in association with a high pressure system up here that's kind of heading off, and how it's basically interacting with the storm systems to create these easterly winds. And I did want to show you how the winds are expected to progress as the storm approaches from the west and drags a front toward it. So easterly winds angling more to the east southeast later in the day. And then we get a little, looks like a little bit of a I would say like a lull. So we're kind of between two stronger wind fields. So a stronger wind field coming up for the US Northeast and a stronger wind field for the south facing beaches. But then the wind field from the south advances, and by early in the day on March 4th or Saturday, we get gale force winds coming out of the southwest with a storm center over the Great Lakes. So just giving you a notion of the progression of winds. And then the winds start to whip around to the west and northwest later in the day on Saturday. And then we get a coastal low, a nor'easter strengthening off of Massachusetts into a powerful low here just off the northeast coast late in the day on Saturday. And then we get those northerly and ultimately northeasterly winds coming in off the backside of that low. Actually, it looks mainly like northerly winds. So by Sunday, it looks like the waves will be better, although temperatures are likely to be cooler. All right, so let's get into, I'm going to show you guys the wave models. Hold on, let's go ahead and move the wave model here. But I do want to get into the trough. So at the Climate Prediction Center, we have a prediction of much cooler than normal conditions for the United States for the lower 48 over the 8 to 14 day time period. And this is kind of like a flashing light for me because I know we've got those warmer than normal waters over the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic Ocean. And in the 8 to 14 day precipitation outlook, we also have stormier conditions than normal for most of the United States, with hot spots here over the Gulf and the US Southwest. And this is an indicator to me of lows forming here over the Gulf, and they tend to track east up the US East Coast. Again, these are like longer range forecasts, so a little bit of a grain of salt, but the tendency is there, and it's been there for the past 3 days. Getting closer to present time frame, we do have an enhanced risk of severe thunderstorms over the Mississippi and Ohio River valleys as the strong storm system that we are expecting over the course of today and tomorrow sweeps on through. We're going to look at that for a minute. Please stay tuned to your local weather and emergency management experts and stay safe out there, guys. Please do not risk yourself in a severe weather condition, and please listen to the weather experts and the emergency management experts when it comes to potential actions. All right, so right now we've got this 979 millibar low pressure. That's a powerful storm system. And it's likely setting off a number of impacts for the regions affected. I'm going to go ahead and advance the model so you guys can see this. The snows for the Great Lakes region look like they will be pretty intense as we get into the day on Saturday, early in the day on Saturday, and continuing through the day on Saturday with that 981 millibar low, powerful low pressure system as we get into the morning hours, and then still strong winter weather event for the Northeast with a coastal low developing as well, with gale force winds coming off the Atlantic affecting Long Island, Rhode Island, Boston, and Maine. And then the low sweeps on offshore as we get into the day on Sunday. In the Outer Banks here, we probably have some good waves on Sunday on the backside of that low. And then what I am going to do is I'm going to go back to the previous model run because I want to look further out in time. Okay, so this is Sunday, March the 5th. Let's go ahead and advance this model and see what happens. So we've got some storms that run through the Great Lakes and a big front that dips on through the east come Wednesday. Some storms lingering over Texas, parts of Oklahoma, parts of the Dakotas, and then a low forms to the south here. and heads off the US East Coast, forming a bit of a nor'easter type system. Now, this, of course, is in the models by Saturday. This is a 997 millibar system in this model, but look how it intensifies here off of Virginia Beach and the Del Mar. So almost immediately we have a 986 millibar low pressure system just off of Virginia Beach in the Delmarva that then intensifies, I believe, I have to use my, oh, yep. So 965 millibars. So this bombs out by Saturday, March 11th into a 965 millibar system off the US East Coast. So a powerful nor'easter here just offshore. And that's really intense. 965 millibars is no joke. But it doesn't stop there. It continues to bomb out, hitting 962 millibars off of the US eastern seaboard, bringing in some pretty raging northerly winds and easterly winds from Nantucket, Nantucket looks like, on south to the Outer Banks in this forecast. Of course, this is 1 week away, so grain of salt territory, but wow. 962, 963 millibar low pressure system, that is a beast. And it does not go away immediately. It sticks around in the 960s range and then heads offshore. So beastly nor'easter there. And then we get this low developing here along the Gulf Coast that picks up energy from those warmer than normal waters in the Gulf, creates some severe weather over Florida, and then starts to track toward the coastline as it intensifies into a 990 millibar system, and then a 986 millibar system just off of the Carolinas here on Tuesday, March 14th in the model, and then maintaining strength as it heads offshore. And then we have the march of this, whoa, powerful storm system on the West Coast and a progression of storms coming from the West Coast with that dip in the jet stream drawing them down toward the Gulf, toward that warmer than normal Gulf of Mexico where all the moisture is, bringing that cool, unstable air behind it, and then getting into this like nor'easter producing zone in the Gulf and then off the US East Coast, also with warmer than normal waters. And I'm not sure if this model, I mean, I think we might get another nor'easter in this model from like a broad area of precipitation. We'll see. Yeah, so we've got a low out here over Oklahoma, but also stormy weather off the coast. And then a low forms off the Carolinas with that cold, unstable air driving down, generating what appears to be severe weather here. This is on the March 17th, March 18 timeframe with a double barrel low, big old low pressure system here off the East Coast and a low down over, looks like Alabama and Mississippi and Georgia. And then in the end of the model, you get that coastal low with that easterly and northeasterly flow. This is a multi-day event here. And still a double barrel low as we get into further into the day on Saturday. And then the energy transfers offshore late in the day, Saturday, March 18th, and finally heads out to sea. So just noting this tendency for powerful nor'easters to form in the model. We've got three. And if this occurs, if we get this big dip in the jet stream, it's probably going to tap into that warmer than normal, unstable air mass, warmer than normal air mass, moisture than normal air mass over the Gulf of Mexico, warmer than normal, moisture than normal air mass over the Atlantic as the unstable air swoops down from the Arctic, driven out by heat moving north. And here in the Outer Banks, we'll probably be under the gun for these potential nor'easters. So we're definitely going to keep a weather eye there. So that's how a warm air invasion of Greenland and the Arctic can change your weather here in the Outer Banks. All right, so let's get back to waves. we are doing Friday for Future, so I did want to go broad, and we've got this kind of big event, what it appears to be shaping up for the United States and potential big nor'easters, possibly. We'll have to see what happens, but it does look like some of the larger ingredients are there. And of course, please listen to your weather experts and your climate experts. Um, just an observer here. So, and I'm talking about what the models are saying and what the where the energy is in the climate system. Please listen to your experts when it comes to weather, particularly when it comes to emergency type weather forecast and major storm events. But in any case, right now, getting back to the waves, we've got 3 to 4 foot waves off of the Outer Banks, 3.5 to 4.5 foot waves coming in from the east while still coming in from the east with those easterly winds blowing. A little bit smaller waves than yesterday, might be more manageable, more more rideable. Over the past couple of days, the waves have been a bit riley. We're going to get more into that later. And then as we get into the day tomorrow, we get those gale force winds coming in from the south and west, which kicks up the surf and chops things up quite a bit. And we get some large waves coming in from the south in the range of 8 to 9 foot significant wave height. So south facing beach is going to see some big waves. And for the for the east facing beaches and the more northerly beaches with that northeast cant to the coastline, we might get a lot of those waves blown out as we get into the day on Saturday. But then as the front passes and we get those northerly winds coming in behind it, for the day on Sunday, the waves start to look pretty good again, in the range of 3.5 to 5 feet for the east-facing beaches behind the powerful storm system that's expected to sweep on through the northeast. And then by Monday, we have a continuation of that nice swell, although the air temperatures and the weather conditions are not going to be as pleasant for surf. The waves do look good in the range of 3 to 5 feet in the near offshore environment. So still pretty big, good waves for surfing on Monday. And then into Tuesday, we get another southerly flow that's going to chop things up for the north and the east facing beaches and blow in some big waves for the south facing beaches. And I don't think we can get into Wednesday. So yeah, by Tuesday, choppy again. So some good waves in the forecast. Looks like 3 out of 5 days looking pretty good. But I will note that with that huge dip in the jet stream and the much warmer than normal ocean waters, that the huge dip in the jet stream bringing in cold air from the Arctic as it just gets driven out by a warm air invasion, and that cold air smashing into these warmer than normal waters and the warmer and moister air mass over those waters. We do have the ingredients for potential severe weather here in the south and east over the Gulf Coast region and offshore here, just offshore off the US East Coast, with a potential for nor'easters coming up in the forecast. So for me, based on what I'm seeing in these models coming from the Climate Prediction Center, I expect some pretty gnarly weather starting about next Saturday, potentially, and then heading on through the next 7 days at least after that, as that big trough digs in over the US, injects that unstable air over that warmer than normal, moister than normal air mass over the ocean. So we shall see. So thank you for joining me for this session of the OBX Wave Report, a Friday for Future session. And I guess at the end of this one, what I will say is that fossil fuel burning is having an impact on the climate system now. And we are seeing the effects now. But we have so much right now also that we can do to prevent future harm. And for those of us who live on the coast, it's like being a Ukrainian facing a Russian invasion in Ukraine. But the war that we face here on the coast is the war on the climate system that is being conducted by fossil fuel burning. And the war on the climate system that is being conducted by fossil fuel burning is a war on the coastlines. And so if you're on the coastlines, you're in it. And I'll say what I said um, to our Ukrainian friends at the beginning of the invasion, the unjust and terrible invasion by Russia into Ukraine. Wars are won in the will, um, and we shouldn't give up our coastlines. We should fight for them, and fighting for them right now means mass deploying clean energy, wind, water, solar, electric vehicles, and halting the burning of fossil fuels. That's what winning the war in the will means, having the will to do that, facing our fears and doing it. We're going to talk a little bit about fear in the next episode, the special Friday for Future episode. And I will be back with you shortly. So thank you for joining me.